all of us to be here, and thank you very much, Adolf, Professor Adolf, to give me the opportunity to present my research to the conference. Sorry not to be with you in Hong Kong, but it's difficult for me to come to be with you this time, perhaps next one. So the aim of this research is it's a work on process, and this work objective is in fact to define the level of data activity of the Northern Sea route from both point of view of the shipper and the shipping company, based on the knowing that the fuel has a strong impact on the cost, based on the CO2 emission of different type of fuel, and trying to change, in fact, the use of LNG. LNG is considered as a fuel that is a very low CO2 emission, which is right, but does it really fit with the requirement of both the NSR, shipping company, shippers, and IMO constraints? So what we're going to look at here is, do you see my slides? Yes? Okay. So what we're going to see here, in fact, is a short introduction. Pardon? Short introduction methodology. I'll show you about the way different type of freight rate we obtain and how we obtain it and what it comes from. What do we do with that? And then I will show you about the result we had from the shipper's perspective, then from the shipping company, and then the short conclusion. So as we all know, and that was been said previously, and it's obvious, ice is melting. Okay, but with the ice melt, then the navigation in the Arctic, or the activity of the navigations in the Arctic increase, showing that both Northern Sea route and Northwest Passage can appear as potential shortcut compared to the Suez Canal route, for example, or to the Panama Canal route. A lot of articles have been wrote about this, so I won't come on this point. But the question is this shortcut also allow a decrease in terms of emission of CO2, for example, knowing that in the IMO 2050 imposed that by 2050, 50% reduction of CO2 compared to 2008 emission. So different tools exist, but what about this option? But to do so, we have to look at the point of view of two main stakeholders: shipping company, which focus mainly on profits. So when we speak about here on profits, we speak of amount of profit per ton of CO2 emitted. But we will also speak about the shipper, and what is the shipper? This is a profit, but it's more how many containers I can load. But it's more than just how many containers, also how many value I can load. So the question is, the point we're going to look at here is the value of cargo ship per ton of CO2 emitted. So the question we raised here is how to combine, in fact, profits of the shipping company, transit time, CO2 emission, and also, of course, the amount of cargo emitted, the amount of value emitted. So for that, in fact, we process in different points. So we consider first different logistic setting organization with different use of hubs. We consider vessel going from Shanghai to Rotterdam with different options. We're going to see that later. And that gives us two shipping lanes for the Northern Sea route or the Suez Canal routes. And we use three types of fuel: MGO, ULSFO, and LNG, with of course different prices, but also we use two types of vessel, because one is for the NSR, one for the NSR, but also because one is used with LNG and the tools, and the other one only with MGO or USFO. So then, as we have LNG and MSO, so we have two fuel consumption, two different type of fuel consumption, but also two emission factors of CO2. We have LNG 1, and we consider the MGO and the USFO emission factors as the same. So roughly, to show you when we speak about logistic organization, this is what it gave us. That we can go, there's different options. The first one is to say, okay, that's the dot blue line. We consider that we have one AA vessel going from Petropavlovsk to Murmansk, Petropavlovsk, like this only. And then we have shuttle vessels that link Petropavlovsk to Shanghai and Murmansk to Rotterdam. That's the first option. The second option is to say, okay, I will go straight from Shanghai to Murmansk, and then with the 1A, and then I will use a shuttle from Murmansk to Rotterdam. The second one is the same, but from the opposite. Rotterdam to Petropavlovsk, and then a shuttle from Petropavlovsk to Shanghai. And the fourth one, you say I use the 1A vessel, the same vessel, to go from Shanghai straight to Rotterdam, avoiding the transshipment, avoiding hubs, etc., etc. And of course, we have the business as usual cases with the orange lines that go through the Suez Canal routes, Suez Canal. The thing is also that we consider that, as has been previously said, that the Arctic is a risky area. We consider different type of condition, but we didn't consider only the thickness or only the concentration, but both, and we combine them with a tool named Polaris, which is a tool that gives the opportunity, in fact, to define the capacity of the vessel to navigate in certain ice conditions, but it's specific to the ice class of the vessel. For example, we consider three cases: worst, with a 25%, medium or average 50%, and the optimistic one. So we see 75%. So we see that, for example, on here, when we are with the -1, you see that in this case, this day, it was on, I don't know, the past before like this. Like, for example, we saw that it's not possible. See, that it stopped. It's not possible to do the trip because the ice condition doesn't allow the vessel to sail. When we are medium, the same day, so it's possible to complete the trip in 9 days, but you will find some difficulty in the E7C, for example, or at the roughly the frontier between the Kara Sea and the Laptev Sea. Whereas when you go directly to the optimistic one, you do the trip in only 7 days, and there is no big issue, in fact. So that's also this element we integrate, because we never know which type of ice we're going to consider, because even if the ice melt from one year to another one is complicated to anticipate it, so we use all these elements to define it. So combining the fact, of course, that every time you need an icebreaker or not, sometimes the fuel is not the same, the speed is not the same, so the fuel is not the same, so the number of days sailing is not the same, so the complete OPEX or CAPEX change. So we arrive, for example, to this level, to this type of freight. So we reach something like roughly like 500 freight rate, different freight rate, that correspond in fact to the price cost of each trip for each integrating different ice conditions, logistic settings. So that's what we hear, for example. So what is interesting is to see the impact, in fact, of the price of the LNG compared to the other one. So you see the LNG is roughly around $1,800 per TU, whereas the other one are around $1,200 per TU. And you see that it's roughly at this level. Why is this interesting? Because we need this to define that activity. With that activity, in fact, of the NSR, and to know how many containers will be loaded, is based on the previous analysis we did a few months ago. Is that to define that we consider that for example, if you go through the Suez Canal routes, you will pay on the westbound roughly 2,200 TU, on the eastbound $1,000 per TU. You will take roughly 22 days from Shanghai to Rotterdam. So it means that according to the freight rate we're gonna use, if you are far above the 2,200 US dollar, for example, then you will lose in activity, but it will be balanced by potential. If you have a potential of transit, the percentage is lower. But if you have both high price, high freight rate, and high transit time, then you lose, and SL lose in terms of activity, and then in terms of loading. If it is below, then of course the vessel will be filled. Okay, so this is what we considered. So based on this, we arrived to this element of the shipper perspective. So I only integrate here ULSFO and LNG because the result of the LSFO and MGO are the same, in fact. So what is interesting to see here is that first, LNG is option that give to the shipper the highest amount of cargo ship in terms of value, roughly something like a bit less than $21,000 per ton of CO2 emitted on a year basis. Whereas when you use the LSFO MGO, you are below around 17,000. So that's the first element. The other element is we see that's funny that, for example, with the LSFO and MGO, if you are from that you may probably use to more interesting if the company doesn't use any hub. Then if you go on LNG, Petroparos became more interesting, probably because of the number of TU loaded, etc. etc. And if you go on the 50%, we are still in the same case. LNG is still the best option. Whatever may be the type of the logistics setting the shipping company may use, no discussion. LNG is a situation that give the opportunity to ship the highest amount of value with the lowest for 1 ton of CO2 emitted. Other one is ULSFO is the most interesting, and then after MGO. Why ULSFOs and then MGO? Simply because ULSFO is the less expensive one compared to the MGO. ULSFO we consider it was about something like $900 per ton, whereas MGO we are around 1,000. And when we are here again, that LNG ULSFO is interesting, but here what is interesting is that in both cases I agree on the fact that the avoiding hubs is the most interesting. It's much more interesting for shippers. So now, as we see for the northern, from the shipping perspective, but from the northern part, we go through compared to the Suez one. Compared to the Suez one, in fact, what we look is the amount of cargo loaded by the NSA minus the amount of cargo loaded by the Suez Canal routes. So we only integrate here the positive one, meaning that when the NSA is more attractive. The thing is that if energy in itself is more interesting compared to the other one, when you are in intra-system, in NSA, we focus only on NSA, but if you compare it, then LNG is no more interesting at all. Meaning that it is more interesting, in fact, to use, for example, ULSFO. Yeah, because it's low expense, and then MGO. So energy here doesn't exist anymore. Then if we look for the shipping company perspective, here what is interesting, in fact, and that's the same, I will show you, but that's the same, in fact, for whatever may be the ice condition. First, the only option that gives the possibility for the shipping company to generate profit is when no hub is used. That's the first element. That clearly, I mean, no discussion about it. You can see that if you only use more Maersk, Petroparos, or the true option is being the most expensive due to the transshipment cost. There are two hubs. No hubs is the best option. That's the first element. The second element, and that's also very interesting compared to the shipper one, is that in fact the energy is less interesting in terms of profits, of amount of profits per ton of CO2 emitted. Always this case, there's no discussion. In fact, it doesn't seem appropriate for a shipping company to use energy, but the best one being ULSFO. When you look at the optimal conditions, the optimal freight rate, no point. The freight rate first is the lowest one, the ULSFO, optimal one, and the amount of profit generated per ton of CO2 emitted is more interesting. So when we look at the 50% is the same, you see that even when ice condition became more interesting I mean, the result is the same. USF is the same. I mean, energy is quite low, etc. And even if the ice conditions are optimal, meaning that you barely need an icebreaker, you are very close to the ice condition, you have the highest level of effectivity because you are very close in terms of condition to the stress can routes, closer to the conditions can stress routes. You have no transshipment, no need for icebreakers, low transit time. But it doesn't change anything. Energy is not interested, may not be interesting for the other one. So to conclude, we found that first the use of LNG is the best option. But to be the best option, it has to be used with very low freight rate, because if you go on a freight rate that is too high, then you lose utility because you are too expensive compared to the freight rate applied in the Suez Canal route. That's the first element. The second one is that compared to the Suez Canal route, the use of the necessary can provide some benefits for the shipper. But, that is interesting, LNG is not used, which should not be used. Then because energy is not interesting for that. Even if we know that the energy has emission factor that is less important than the other one. Another interesting is that if compared to the NSA itself, energy is more interesting. Regarding from the shipping company point of view, the USFO is the best one. Why? Because it's less expensive. So it gives the opportunity, and knowing that the fuel is one of the highest costs when sailing in the Arctic. That's obvious. So the great question is in fact for us is really to know if the shipper is ready to pay more for same services or a little bit less attractive services, and is the company ready, in fact, also to decrease its profits by turn of so limited. So that's kind of the big issue that we should raise in our articles. So thank you very much.